There is a long road ahead. It's going to take courage, a lot of vulnerability, and a lot of work. But I'm hopeful, and I feel rather than animosity or confusion or distrust between myself and the First Nations, I feel a much deeper sense of connection and purpose. And I hope to share that with the rest of Canada.
Lake 14 began in the heart of the Great Bear Rainforest in Bella Bella. We were very inspired by the community because of all the different initiatives they have underway. It's a community where they've really made a huge effort to make sure that their culture is strong and that their youth are really engaged and being taught that culture.
Well, 40 years ago we were still suffering horrifically from the residential school fallout. You know, it took a while to transition out of that oppression. But once we got a generation, you know, that came through a different kind of world, all that's changed now. People began to find strength. You should hear our kids sing now. They belt out their songs, you know. They're so proud of it. It's just an amazing transition, and I think the culture's really been the basis of their strength. And that gives them the confidence to go out, get an education, work in white society, you know, be part of the bigger world.
Probably the most powerful part of this trip for me was meeting Chief Harvey Humchit and getting sort of a tour through his territory with him.
The float was for the Japanese fishermen.
Okay.
And the pylons over on this side, that's where the native floats were. And the native village was on this side here.
Namu is an old cannery that at one point had over 2,500 people working there, including Harvey. There was a real mixture of feelings when we visited Namu.
The fog is rolling across the river, and you get this sense of timelessness and awe of creation, and it's beautiful. And you understand that we're supposed to be stewards of creation. But you look back and you see the river meets the shore where this cannery was abandoned, and you get a sense of man's arrogance and perhaps short-sightedness. So it's a really weird dichotomy.
Seeing that sheer impact that humans can have, a destructive impact, and how this big mess was left behind and it hasn't been cleaned up.
Imagine you are on top of a rock cliff. Right below you is crashing water, and it's just this meeting place of all these different elements.
When we got to Kwakwa, we could see why it was such a special place. Tucked in a bay, absolutely beautiful sand beach, a place you just didn't want to leave.
C'est une nature qui est impressionnante, autant en termes de quantité d'espèces, mais d'accessibilité aussi et de disponibilité.
So there's so many resources there that they could use to spur on employment and to inject some life into their economy, but they see those resources more important than an economy. It's the future, and so it's really, really impressive to see a community that in economic straits like that still has such foresight. That was a real new lens for me. When you place it next to the way that much of Canada, and certainly where I'm from, the way that we live in the world is very economy based.
I think it's hard for people from the city to understand what it's like on the West Coast. Small communities along the coast, you know, we rely on the ocean, we rely on our land for food and for culture and our way of well-being. I wish that everybody could come on this journey and to stand on a rock in the middle of the ocean and just really take it in and experience that.
For me, as a natural sciences museum person, the day at Hakai Institute was truly inspiring.
I am a firm believer in really old-fashioned, old-school science. Not science to solve immediate problems, not science to improve our economy in the next 2 years. Science as exploration and discovery.
It was wonderful to hear the story of how the idea came about and saying, you know, we've got to do something with this former fishing lodge. And then Eric and Christina turning that into a research institute and a nationally and globally renowned center of scientific knowledge.
Go up in front of that boat.
From Hakai, we went all the way up Rivers Inlet to Wuikinuxv. Thank you very much. I'm Jeff Green. Nice to meet you too. It was maybe the rainiest day of Canada's C3 history. Big houses are a big part of West Coast culture. They're very central buildings where ceremony takes place. And it became a very powerful sharing circle with some of their elders telling us about very, very painful parts of their lives, particularly their time spent in residential school. The stories were so similar to those we've heard coast to coast to coast. It never becomes less difficult to hear those stories, and they're equally as just traumatic and horrific and painful.
It was the most moving thing that's ever happened to me, the feeling and the surge of being in this movement of people around the fire, like the way the sun moves. And it felt really strong. That's what reconciliation feels like to me.
You know, if you're touched or moved by something, that stays with you. And it changes how you behave, how you interrelate. You'll tell the story and that extends it. I think that's the real legacy, is how this whole expedition touched people.
Avant de vivre cette expérience-là, j'étais ignorante, complètement ignorante en termes de connaissances au niveau des communautés autochtones.
People are ready, people are willing to learn, and people are hearing us now as Indigenous people.
Canada C3 has brought forward so many powerful stories that together I think are going to set the stage for a lot of change in Canada over the next years.
I'm going to take home the idea of moving forward together is really special to me.